Tonight's lead breaking news. George Zimmerman will not be charged after alleged domestic incident today. According to Orlando Sentinel, Zimmerman's wife is declining to press charges. George Zimmerman questioned by police. His wife, Shelley, who just filed for divorce, accuses George of threatening her and her father with a gun. At this hour, police are still on the scene at the home of Shelley's father in Lake Mary, Florida. Here's what we know. Earlier today, there was an altercation. Both sides say the other was the aggressor. During the altercation, George's wife, Shelley, made a frantic 911 call.
He's in his car, and he continually has his hand on his gun, and he keeps saying, step closer. He's just threatening all of us with his firearm. And he's going to shoot us.
Okay.
He punched my dad in the nose. My dad has a mark on his face. I saw his glasses were on the floor. He accosted my father and then took my iPad out of my hand and smashed it and cut it with a pocket knife. And there's a Lake Mary city worker across the street that I believe saw almost all of it. I don't know what he's capable of. I'm really scared. Dad, get behind a car or something. I don't know if he's going to start shooting at us or not.
Lake Mary police have taken George Zimmerman's gun while they consider whether to make an arrest. Joining me now, MSNBC legal analyst Lisa Bloom, Florida defense attorney Kevin Padowitz, defense attorney John Burris, and former prosecutor Marcia Clark. She's author of Killer Ambition. Lisa, tell me your reaction to this today.
Well, it certainly confirms what many of us have thought about George Zimmerman all along, that he's impulsive, that he's hot-headed, and that he tends to threaten and go after people when he shouldn't be doing that. And so much of this is reminiscent of the Trayvon Martin case, his hand on the gun, threatening them with the gun. Even a punch to the nose, a punch to George Zimmerman's nose in the Trayvon Martin's case was so central. Ultimately, this is a domestic violence call, and even though Shelley Zimmerman does not want to press charges, many police departments will nevertheless investigate anyway, especially if there is a witness, as she says there is. So this may not be the end of it. This may just be the beginning.
Now, Marcia Clark, the fact that he, according to what his wife says on the 911 tape, says he's threatening with the gun. He keeps going, putting his hand on the gun. What do you get out of that as a former prosecutor?
Well, that's threatening conduct, Reverend. That's what we would call potential assault with a deadly weapon. If the words and other conduct accompany it to show that he has the present intent to inflict serious bodily injury or use the firearm, then that's an assault. You don't have to touch someone to be guilty of assault with a deadly weapon. It doesn't sound like it went that far. I can't tell exactly. And the fact that she doesn't want to press charges is not helpful to the case. But Lisa's right. We don't, especially in Los Angeles, I know, we don't allow the victims to decide they're not going to press charges. It's an affront to and a violation of the rules that govern the people of the state of California. And so we can go forward with the case regardless of whether she's in favor of it. And they may still do that.
Let me repeat, we are discussing George Zimmerman at what is apparently a domestic incident at the home of his father-in-law that involved a gun, and police are weighing whether to make an arrest. Let me go to you, Ken Padowitz. You know Florida law very well, and you went with us throughout the case of George Zimmerman. In terms of Florida law, what is going on here when they say that they took his gun, we understand, and they are waiting to see whether or not there's going to be an arrest?
Well, I'm experiencing a sense of deja vu, Reverend. Basically, we have the police in Florida once again taking possession of George Zimmerman and then releasing him. Now, here there's different circumstances, but a gun allegedly is involved in this situation as well. Under Florida law, it is not up to the victim. Marcia Clark is right. It is not up to the victim, contrary to what the chief of police said there in Florida, that it's not up to the victim whether or not to press charges. It's up to the state attorney. And so the state attorney's office is going to have to review this to see, is there nothing here, nothing criminal, or is there a misdemeanor battery against his father-in-law, or is there an aggravated assault with a firearm, which is a felony? But it's up to the state attorney whether or not laws were broken here and whether or not to file charges. Of course, the victim and what they have to say is important in the case, but they are not the sole determinant factor as to whether or not charges are pressed here. So there may be something happening in the future in this case.
Well, John Burris, whether the victim presses charges or not, according to Ken, they don't have to. But if you listen to the 911 tape, she says he punched my father. He keeps going for the gun or touching the gun. I don't know whether he's going to shoot us or not. I mean, legally, what does this expose Zimmerman to, John?
Well, certainly the tape itself, in the way it's described, certainly there's a battery involved, no question, in terms of an assault and battery on her father. And of course, the use of the gun and the manner in which it was used, you could have potentially an assault here. But I think you have what here is a person who is truly out of control here, and his gun should not be given back to him under the circumstances while this matter is pending. Charges, I think, will get filed against him, if nothing else, for the father. The wife's frantic call is very serious, and it's not atypical for the wife not to want to press charges, but it's also typical for the DA to want to go forward with some charges, particularly in a domestic situation where a gun is involved and physical force is being used.
Lisa, Shelley Zimmerman, who filed for divorce last week or announced it, she said in an interview just days ago this about her husband, George Zimmerman. Listen to this.
In my opinion, he feels more invincible. I just think he's making some reckless decisions. I have been married to a person for almost 7 years, and I don't think I ever really knew him at all.
He feels invincible. What does that say to you, Lisa, in light of these developments today, as much as we know about them anyway?
Well, it's very disturbing stuff because she's the person who has been closest to George Zimmerman for the last 6 or 7 years. You know, she also revealed recently that the two of them had had a fight on the night that Trayvon Martin was killed. Before George Zimmerman went out in his SUV, they had had a fight, and that can tell us something about his mental state. You know, if only that had come into the trial. The problem with Shelley Zimmerman, though, is that she's also an admitted perjurer. She just pleaded guilty to perjury. So her credibility is always going to be a difficult issue if she were to go to trial against George Zimmerman. So, you know, there's big problems on both sides here. But I think what she's saying about George Zimmerman, look at what he's done recently. 2 speeding tickets in the last couple of weeks. Going to a gun manufacturer, the same gun manufacturer of the gun that he used to kill Trayvon Martin, and then taking a picture and posting it online. You know, really insensitive kind of behavior, to put it mildly. And invincible is probably just the right word for how he feels about himself. He just keeps getting away with stuff.
Marcia, do you feel the fact that, as stated by Lisa, that there's problems of credibility on both sides, the fact that there's this tape where she's actually, at least it seems like she's addressing her father, does that give the prosecutors reason to say we have to step forward and look very seriously about an arrest here?
Well, they have to look very seriously about an arrest here because the 911 call, as John said, describes very serious conduct. You know, if it's true that the father was attacked by him, punched in the nose, and that the father was in enough distress to be worried about having a heart attack, as she states in the call, that he's telling her, step closer, so that right. With its hand on the gun, which is very threatening conduct. The DA has to look into that, It's an assault with a deadly weapon, a potential felony, as well as a misdemeanor on the father-in-law. So I really do, there's no question they have to look into it. His state of mind, as far as perjury problems on both sides, sure. Her problem with it, Shelley Zimmerman's problem, is that she is a convicted perjurer. Yeah. But what they will look at is the fact that her perjury occurred in support of him. It was to support his bid for bail when she was hiding the fact that they had money that had gone into their coffers. Yeah. So that might weigh in favor of her credibility now when she's in extremis and obviously under enormous distress. So that may not hurt her as much as you might think. He, on the other hand, has quite a few credibility problems.
Well, Let me say this. Lisa mentioned that they had a fight the night he had left and shot and killed Trayvon Martin. That didn't go into trial. Neither did the fact that he had cases of arrest, resisting arrest and battery before. But let me also hasten to add, as we cover this story, as others are, I said to my radio show audience today, we should not gloat or play the game of I told you so. This is egregious if it's true. Domestic violence is nothing anyone should celebrate or play I told you so. These are serious matters, and we want him to have the same way of having his rights under the law that we fought for Trayvon Martin. So in no way are we gloating or saying I told you so. We are saying these things are serious and should be dealt with fairly and seriously. Thanks to the panel. We'll have more with you on our coverage of the story as it continues. One note, George Zimmerman has sued NBC Universal for defamation. The company strongly denies the allegation.